Our goal is to build Canada's first trillion-dollar company. Calgary is going to become the first AI native city in Canada. What we see is a new asset class emerging, one that isn't just software, it isn't just hardware, it's both of them together. It's called AI infrastructure.
And this is the next macro mega category of infrastructure is data.
We're taking over the world. Hi.
Dan, Graeme.
Hi.
Hey, Phil.
Welcome to Tech Thursday. We actually don't even know what we're calling this thing, but this little interview series.
Interview Thursday.
Welcome to Interview Thursday.
Boom. I'm going to charge you for that one.
Intersday.
Yeah, Intersday. Graeme and Dan, you guys, we are right now in the site of Simply Silicon's upcoming data center.
That's correct.
But before we talk about this site and what's going on, you guys also started Augur VC.
Yeah.
What's the thesis behind Augur VC?
Augur VC is the marrying of energy and intelligence. So essentially what we're investing in and we're supporting is the thesis that the demand for intelligence has no end. And with that demand, there's a requirement to power it. The chips of tomorrow became the chips of today just over the last couple of years. 100x to 1,000x more energy demands to power AI. With AI, you accelerate intelligence. That intelligence can transform incumbent industries like the energy industry to better utilize their data, their processes, their systems to massively accelerate the Earth's access to energy.
Okay. And so operating in this space now, you guys were interacting with obviously data centers.
You bet.
And then you decided, hey, there's probably an opportunity here to start something called Simply Silicon, which is the space that we're in now. What was the conviction behind building Simply Silicon?
You know, we incubated it for 2 years inside of our first fund. It really narrowed to a very fine point over time. You know, we started out looking at just like, a generic neocloud thesis, which means, putting chips in places and letting people use them for AI. What we eventually got to was this realization that everybody wants power. And there are places that you can find power inside of existing utilities, like where we are now, that could really be very competitive, not just because of the power, but because of other attributes that those sites have as well. At the same time, some of those sites are located right in the middle of major cities. And there's all sorts of customers in major cities who want access to AI services, but don't want to just get them over the open internet, either because it's not secure enough, because it's not reliable enough, doesn't offer them latency guarantees. And so you can really serve a differentiated customer base if you're able to find these big sites of utility power in major cities. And so what we're sitting in right now is one of those.
Yeah, so this is Calgary's district heating, which means, what does that mean?
So I think there's 27 buildings that are on the network. This building produces hot water, huge amounts of hot water using natural gas. It burns it to create the hot water, and it sends it out through big, long conduits underground to buildings. And there's a heat exchanger in the building. The hot water then can be used to heat the building or to deliver other thermal services to that building much more efficiently than by putting like a boiler on the roof of the building, which is the traditional option.
Way of doing it. And so you guys
can kind of take like tens to like 100 square feet, and you can produce the same amount of hot water that you would if you had to take like an entire floor's worth of space within one of the buildings. So the efficiency, the system, and the infrastructure that supports it opens up that infrastructure, as you can imagine, within buildings downtown to be used for other services, which is a huge advantage and value for the tenants and the owners of the building infrastructure.
And so you guys look at this where you're trying to build Simply Silicon.
Yeah.
And you guys look at it's the nat gas play that is interesting to you guys, because you guys go, oh, these guys are producing a lot of natural gas. We can use that energy to power compute and data centers.
So
is that the concept?
The biggest thing is, there's a lot of power density here. So if you look at throughout downtown Calgary, what's the biggest data center in downtown Calgary right now? It's about 300 kilowatts. So a kilowatt is like a measure of power.
Yeah.
What we've got here, thanks to the robust utility infrastructure that's gone into the site, is about 12 megawatts, so about 40 times bigger than the next data center in downtown Calgary. That in turn allows us to do lots of things that you couldn't do by just, trying to put chips into an existing office building. You just wouldn't have the power to do it. So really the bedrock of the thesis here is we've got access to a much larger block of capacity than other players.
Okay. The other thing that this space allows is because it's connected to 27 buildings across Canada, across Calgary, using sort of underground tunnels that it's built. You now have the opportunity to lay fiber along those hot water lines and deliver fiber, so you have low latency, access to compute. Yeah.
So it's a private air-gapped fiber network. So you can think about there's the regular internet, and the regular internet's great, but it's got all sorts of issues if you want to do certain things with it. The security can be in question. The routing times, like how are you certain that the packet will go across downtown, or might it go to Minneapolis first or down to Virginia first? You have less control over that. What the private air-gapped fiber network lets us do here is provide very, very high guarantees of both security while information is in transit on the one hand, and latency, reliability of latency. So you don't just know that it's going to be fast, you know that it's going to be very, very certainly fast, and you can control why that happens versus if you're trying to route over the public internet.
Yeah.
And you can imagine that some compute, some people that have data that there is very proprietary, very confidential, would not want to take the risk, or actually may not be permitted to take the risk, to go and to send that across all of those bounce points, right? So right now, if you had a building, let's just use an example, you have the Harry Hayes building downtown, you have all this government data. If the government of Canada wanted to train a model on that government data, they could house that model here, and then they have a direct fiber connect to their database that's feeding that information. So you have this capability to provide essentially an end-to-end secure service that you can't get if you're packaging out your data and your compute workloads to Virginia or elsewhere where there's massive concentrations of cloud compute.
Yeah, I'm gonna come back to talking a little bit more about the co-location and the project timelines. But Graeme, you wrote about AI bubbles.
Oh yeah.
And how you think that Alberta is in an AI data center bubble, in the sense that there's about 90% of all projects right now that are going to fail.
Yeah.
What's that take?
So, we do venture capital. We've got 2 funds. People become aware that we're doing AI stuff, and they're like, hey, I should pitch those guys to get money for my project. Starting in, I'm going to say 2023, we started to get pitches from people who are, speculative, like real estate developers. Like they're not doing it because they're interested in building something that, is beneficial for their own organization. They're trying to do it to either, sell it down the line or flip it or something like that. What we noticed was that, even in those days when the market was more favorable to the types of assets that were being developed, there was a lot of missteps being made by developers. We ended up getting hundreds and hundreds of pitches of this type. Like I don't know, there's a period when we're getting like 2-3 a day, like every day, 7 days a week for like months. What we ended up seeing was that there's a lot of capital here. There's land, there's natural gas, there's, cold temperatures, all these things that people think are important. And those are important. But the big thing we noticed was a lack of customer awareness. And so you have these people building on the thesis of, well, build it and they will come. And the issue is that's not how it works in this space. If you don't have an off-taker in mind, strong relationships, an understanding of what they want, saying, oh, well, I'll build you anything. Well, guess what? So will every other rich guy in the world.
Right. Yeah.
It didn't really convert to anything. What you're seeing now with a lot of projects that are both being planned for on-grid access, you can see those in the Alberta Electric System Operator queue, projects being planned off-grid. You're seeing this great swell of projects, and like that, the ones that you can see publicly doesn't even represent 10% of them. There's so many of them. There's a lot of development capital being sunk into them. There are people making contracts to sell things to them, and startups then going out and trying to finance off of those. And they're not all going to convert. The vast majority won't convert. The vast majority of them will end up stranded. And so you'll see wealth destruction.
Yeah.
And to put a fine point on it, I mean, you come from the tech space. If you don't know your customer, or you're trying to sell to your customer based on what they wanted 4 years ago because it took you that long to build a project and get everything enabled, do you have a product? You don't have a product.
Right.
You need to sell for what the customer wants today, that they're willing to pay for today, or you need to be foresightful enough and be on the frontier of this whole industry to be able to see, this is actually what they're going to need because this is where the world's going. And it's very rare to see that kind of insight out of the developers in Alberta, unfortunately.
Yeah. And so why does Simply Silicon succeed in a world of an AI bubble?
I think there's two reasons. I think that, to go to Dan's last point, we just know where the market's going. We've got dozens of investments across, companies that are at the very forefront of the market. Our perception of what is going to be in demand, for the next 25 years, we're very certain of. And number two, we've got very, very strong access to the end users and to the customers. I mean, we own platforms that, are demand capture platforms for the space. We know exactly what people want and why they want it. And we're building highly differentiated infrastructure against that. It's not a big, I'll build for the hyperscalers. I'll build a gigawatt out in the middle of nowhere. Anyone can do that. What we're doing here is very, very appealing to a very large swath of people who are just starting to plan now the next billions that they spend. And when they look around for opportunities that are ready, not 3 years from now, not 5 years from now, but today, we're one of the very few in the world that can credibly claim that.
Yeah. And talk to me more about like the urban, downtown, low latency core thesis versus like the build in the middle of like rural nowhere.
Yeah. So happy to go into this. So one of the things, McKinsey coined this term recently, AI native cities. So you can imagine a city where all of the back end stuff exists to allow for next generation AI services, not just chatbots to your phone, but things like, AI cameras, robotics, industrial uses, autonomous vehicles, delivery robots, all of these kinds of things. You're seeing all of this stuff emerge right now, and you say, wow, that's really cool. How does it all work? Well, for something like a Waymo, you have a big battery on board, and so that big battery can run chips right on the car so that the car can find its way around. But if you're looking at something like a humanoid robot, those robots have very efficient but very limited energy capacity on board, and that restricts their ability to do something very energy intensive, like think. And so what you have to do is you have to offboard that thinking to the cloud. Now, one way to do that is to build something, out in the middle of nowhere, and for some services that's going to work. But for a lot of services that we're seeing emerge, and for a lot of players we're talking to who are building this stuff today, they're saying, I need a much higher degree of certainty about latency between the time that the robot needs to know something, the time that the thinking happens, and the time that the instructions come back. And it's not enough to say, theoretically I could get good latency once in a while. It has to be highly reliable thanks to the way that the network was constructed. So Calgary is going to become the first AI native city in Canada in about a couple months when we put this facility into operation.
Because of this, right?
Because of this facility.
Yeah.
It's already, in my view, the nascent AI capital of Canada in terms of capital markets, in terms of infrastructure expertise in place, subject matter expertise in place, the workforce in place. But what this is going to do is really put us on the map as this is a place where companies all over the world building things like robotics, building things like live video, live services of all varieties that use AI can come and integrate them directly into the fabric of the city without waiting for the infrastructure to catch up with their products. And so it's really going to differentiate us, certainly against Toronto and Vancouver, but also even against a number of big American centers.
Yeah. I want to talk right now, spend a bit more time talking about like why Calgary, why Alberta, why Canada in this time more broadly. One thing that we haven't seen in the data center space, I mean, there's been a lot of talk about building data centers. There's also like every province has its own appeal, right? Quebec has hydro. Yeah. We have like nat gas and largely deregulation. But one thing we haven't seen is any hyperscalers say, we're going to come in and build a data center in Canada or make large investments in data centers in Canada. It's not something we're seeing. Why is that? And what's kind of like stopping this growth? Because we do have the cold temperatures. We do have an energy abundance. Like, why have you guys made this bet for Calgary when some of the hyperscalers haven't?
So this is a really key part of our thesis. Like, we don't have to operate here. We've got a big operation in San Francisco. Like, most of our investments are there. A lot of our capital's there. A lot of our people are there. We've got really strong access to network there. We've got a lot of appeal in the US. Like, ironically, people seem to like us more in America than in Canada.
Why is that?
For lots of reasons.
I imagine the conversation will go there soon enough.
Yeah, we'll go there soon enough. But the reason that we're here is that Calgary, thanks to its energy legacy and its infrastructure legacy, is really a one-of-a-kind place. We think its cultural values, its proximity to San Francisco. It's natural gas of Alberta, the deregulated market here, the ability to largely move without, an overburden of permits here, regulatory simplicity. There's a variety of factors that all add up to, if you scour the whole world and you give a score and you stack rank every market, Calgary's number one, and it's not just number one by a little bit, it's number one by a lot. It beats Houston, it beats London. Certainly San Francisco can't do this on its own. There isn't that infrastructure legacy there. People there don't understand how to finance these projects, how to engineer them, how to build them. SaaS and software was viewed as like the be all end all. Oh, software is going to eat everything. Well, it turns out that's not true at all, right? Like, Google's an infrastructure business. Microsoft's an infrastructure business. NVIDIA's a physical world business. These are all companies that make things and print cash off of physical assets in the physical world. And so our ability to bring together the expertise in AI and the excellence in AI that San Francisco offers, the busyness, the capital market around that, together with a real global infrastructure leader. I mean, we built the oil sands out of Calgary. It's the greatest oil and gas project, one of the greatest engineering projects in human history. To bring these two things together, that's our thesis. And at the core of it, what we see is a new asset class emerging, one that isn't just software, it isn't just hardware, it's both of them together. It's called AI infrastructure.
I think there's a couple other points here. Like, there is a concentration of capital here. And it's not just the capital that's like, well, there's venture funds, well, there's private equity. It's the people that are behind the investments out of Calgary, which is individuals that have built their livelihoods and have built their legacies and want to continue their legacies into infrastructure. And this is the next macro mega category of infrastructure, is data, the intersection of the chips and the power, bringing them together, and whatever powers that electricity, right, are the ocean of natural gas that we sit on. The other part, and Graeme has kind of touched on this, I just want to drill into it a teeny tiny bit more, is you have this massive concentration of engineering and systems thinkers that have built infrastructure. If you can take those systems thinkers and you could apply them to problems like this, but then those systems thinkers start to thinking and innovating and using tools in AI that are unlocked by having concentration of next generation infrastructure here, you now have put a lighthouse up to be like, innovators come here, builders come here, build the next generation of great companies and do it here. You have to do it here because the infrastructure that supports you and the capital that supports you lives here.
Yeah. So Simply Silicon and Augur VC have now built the world's first AI native city.
Yeah.
And have the capital to come and support the robotics companies to come and set up here in Calgary. And this is the utopic Calgary of the future that you guys perceive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's amazing.
Nailed it.
Talk to me about 12,000 megawatts.
12 megawatts.
Oh,
12,000 kilowatts.
12,000 kilowatts.
Yeah.
12,000 kilowatts.
Yeah.
That's site one. That's what V1 looks like in a couple months when you guys hit go. Give me an idea of that scale. I mean, you kind of mentioned that it will be bigger than what exists, but like, how many customers can you have?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're looking at about 10,000 GPUs, so 10,000 individual thinking units for AI here. To give you a sense, the largest installation in the world is Elon Musk's Colossus. That's about 100,000. Of course, he has a long head start on us. But the difference is that ours is really strategically positioned to do things that his is not able to do. So we're building, Just two humble guys from Saskatchewan building a giant supercomputer in this building.
Shout out Craven.
Shout out to Craven. Shout out to Saskatoon. Aiden Bowman Bears represent. We're building something here that is world class. It's there's nothing else like this. You're going to see projects come out of the government to try and build a supercomputer, and it'll be fine, but it'll be detuned versus what we're building. It won't have the North Star of commercial exploitation that we've got that has really guided the design of the facility and guided the design of the computer. There's all sorts of different ways to think about scale, but even on day one, it's going to be the largest independently owned and operated facility of its kind in Canada.
Amazing. And you're calling this computer Foundation.
Foundation, you got it.
Yeah. And so it sounds like 1/10 of the largest supercomputer Colossus.
That's right.
Just in terms of like GPU.
That's correct.
And we have some GPUs today that we're going to take a look at.
We don't have any GPUs here today.
Oh, okay.
We got to bring them. We're still bringing them in, but they're in Calgary now at least. So
okay, they're in Calgary.
We're going to take a tour. You might see other things. You might see a transformer today.
Okay.
We've got our transformer recently showed up here. We're going to have Crane Day soon, and actually I want you all to come out for Crane Day.
Yeah.
We should make some video content
Rodney,
that
the
day.
RTU, is going to be taking his trip from ground level to the roof.
Oh, that's
We're
exciting.
going to be blocking off 4th over there. There's going to be a crane to lift it up. We're going to be flying drones around the whole 9 yards.
Wow.
I know, it's going to be a blast.
Okay, that'd be awesome. I'm definitely going to be here for that.
It's
That's
going to be so
so
sick. It's going to be so sick.
That'll be awesome. Okay, so you got 12,000 GPUs coming in. V1, what's really cool about this space that we're in is eventually there's going to be an opportunity to use the heat waste. To heat, because this facility here is heating some of the neighborhood, the buildings that surround it. There's going to be an opportunity to use the heat waste from the data center to heat some of these buildings downtown.
Correct.
And not just let it evaporate.
Correct.
But that's not the case on day one, right?
No. So the first installation that we're putting in, we're air cooling, just for expediency and time to market. The second phase, we're going to be liquid cooling, and the liquid coming off of those chips is very, it's got a lot of heat in it. So there's two benefits to this. Benefit one, instead of just expelling the heat to the atmosphere, we're able to use it for some productive purpose. Benefit two, right now the facility consumes a lot of natural gas in order to generate heat. By using electricity to generate that heat instead, we can then offset the amount of natural gas the facility uses. So we can make it more environmentally friendly, emits less carbon, is generally more efficient against the thesis. And as a result of that, the heat that gets delivered to people in downtown Calgary will be that much more better for the environment versus today. Not that it's particularly bad today, but we're even going to improve it further.
Yeah, I'm curious, on the liquid cooling side, are you guys using... Oh, okay.
You're getting.
I thought I was getting the 5 minutes, but we're just getting an elbow scratch
already. Just getting warmed up.
Done.
We're
You're
just
done.
getting
We're
warmed up.
toast. That was quick. Holy cow. I thought that was just 7 or 8 minutes.
Oh,
There
no,
you go.
we got a lot more time. Oh, we got 20 minutes.
Oh, amazing. Okay.
Oh, shit. Okay. No,
Play some songs if you want.
yeah, we can talk a little bit more about Craven.
Yeah. Oh, Craven's
Oh my
beautiful.
goodness.
Yeah.
Get us.
Shall we?
We can. I'm happy to. No,
Man, one more. If we had done this a day earlier, Ray and Audrey could have been on the show.
but Ray and Audrey.
My parents could have been here.
No way.
Could
Were
have
they
left
here?
yesterday morning? Yeah.
Wow.
Down
oh,
from Craven.
man, that would have been amazing.
They never leave Craven. It was really a spectacle.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, well, you should have told us. We would have been here. This whole thing. Maybe it should be Craven.
Next one.
Yeah,
That's
the
our
next one.
next site. Is
Man,
in
AI
beautiful.
by Audrey would be quite the segment.
Oh,
I tell you.
Can you imagine AI talking or Audrey talking about AI? I can't even.
It would have been stellar.
It'd
though.
be beautiful.
But yeah, so back to back to liquid cooling. I'm
Yeah.
only just learning about liquid cooling and the different phases, and I understand there's liquid cooling and evaporative cooling.
Yeah.
Are you guys doing evaporative cooling, or are you guys doing the cool IT liquid
So
cooling?
on day one, we're doing fully dry air cooling. So there's
Okay.
no water usage. It's just forced air. And the result of that is that you trade electricity for water use, basically, which is a good thing to do in this particular facility because we've got a surplus of power. With liquid cooling, what you're doing is you're bringing a cooling liquid, can be water, it can be other things, directly to the chip, off taking the heat from the chip into that liquid because it's got thousands of times more heat absorption capacity than air, and then ejecting that heat through through some other form of heat transfer system. So in this case, by bringing it directly into the data center's heating loop, we're able to do something economical with it, as opposed to just shooting it up into the atmosphere.
Yeah. Okay. And what happens maybe during electricity shortages? Like, for example, Alberta 3 years ago, I think we had to ask everyone to not use any more electricity.
Yeah.
What happens when there's a massive data center sort of pulling quite a bit of electricity in that case?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So one of the things that we're really happy about with this facility is that it falls under the large load limit. It's substantially below that limit where it could imperil the power grid. So just from a scale lens, we're coming in right up the middle where it's large enough to be very economical, but not so large that you end up having to jump through a lot of hoops or pay extra taxes to get electricity for it. In this particular facility, one of the coolest things about it is because it's an existing utility and it's built to utility spec, it's much, much more reliable than the average usage of, like, the average user of power in the city. So you've got not only two different grids that it's connected to that it can take supply from simultaneously, it's also got a variety of on-site generation and backup systems that can additionally keep it going. It's a highly reliable. There's a clock upstairs. We'll see it during the tour later. That says this is the number of days since like a serious incident. It's like 6,700 days at this point. So
Yeah.
every day since it
Which
started.
is the life of the asset.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there has not been an incident.
Yeah.
There's not been an incident.
So it's
Okay.
a very reliable piece of infrastructure. One of the things that we've found to be very beneficial about co-locating with existing utility infrastructure is that the engineering that goes into these facilities is a much higher grade than just putting up a box on the edge of town as some real estate developer. That engineering allows us to be much more certain about the reliability of the system.
Everyone loves talking about co-location now with data centers. Like, why is this such a big thing, co-locating a data center with an existing asset?
So, if you look at like the people in Northern Europe, they've been looking at how do we put data centers into existing stuff for a long time. There's a lot of different reasons for that. Economics is a big one. Access to power is another one. At the same time, a lot of the things that we're talking about doing in this facility have either never been done before in Canada or never been done anywhere in the world. So we are, as far as we know, the first player to do something like this in Canada, where you take an existing district heating plant and you integrate a data center directly into its operations. We also talked to some of the engineers here who went to a conference in Washington, D.C. Last December about what they learned at that conference. And one of the things that they learned is there's a lot of people talking about doing this waste heat offtake that we're now planning to do. There's a lot of people who think it's a great idea, who are saying, boy, somebody should do that. But one of the main themes of the conference is, well, nobody's ever done it before. We don't actually know how to do it. And if you look at utilities, one of the things that we've seen culturally that's an important item to think about if you're ever trying to do something like this. Utilities don't ever want to be the first to do something.
Yeah.
Good utility practice is not to experiment on your infrastructure. It's to follow known best practices and gold standards. So the ability to figure out how to get all the players aligned to build something like this isn't trivial, and it's been a big part of the work that we've done to make this real.
Like when you start Phillip infrastructure,
Right.
Thursday infra, what you're going to see is that, and you can just look back over time, it has not got easier to build things generally. There's more regulation, there's more stakeholdering required. There's reasons why hydroelectric facilities were built in the 50s, and why giant vast swaths of land were flooded, and people had to leave and find new places to live. It was because that was enabled. You could just do that and say, I'm doing this, and it's done. The world we live in today, very rarely do things get easier to do over time. They get much, much, much harder to do. So if you look at what would have had to go to build a facility like this, even in 2010 when it happened, to get it permitted, to get it built, the costs associated with it, all of that time, energy, and the complexity of the cost, that has gone up demonstrably since then, and it continues to go up demonstrably. So if you think about existing assets as existing infrastructure, if you can use it, you're way better off than trying to build everything from scratch today.
Yeah. Okay.
You're the monster.
You're demonstrating very well today, Graeme.
Thank you.
So if no one's ever done the waste heat capture, how does that happen? Because I would assume that natural gas heating boilers is like a very intense form of energy, and liquid coming off of chips
Yeah.
is maybe not necessarily as hot. And so how do you kind of bridge that gap, the engineering
the
gap?
easiest way to think about it is that you have to upgrade the heat. So the heat coming off the chips, to your point, it's not going to be hot enough to be safe to use in the system here and keep all of the bad bacteria at bay. You have to have a certain temperature of heat. Without going too far into the rabbit hole, the effective way that you do that is using heat pumps to upgrade it. So you have something that, you put in 1 unit of energy and it's able to, move 3 units of heat against that. That type of a system allows you to take the waste heat coming off of the chips, turn it into something useful in this context, and the water returns and you're able to do the whole thing over again.
Okay. Awesome. That's very exciting.
I know, it's very cool.
Yeah. And so we talked about we talked a little bit about like the government as a customer.
Yeah.
Dan, you're smiling. And maybe before we get into that, how has uptake been in terms of customers?
Good. So we've done a deal. We've done one deal now for this facility. We'll be sharing more information about that publicly in due time. It's with a US cloud provider. They're more able to move on it because they know exactly what they want. Again, we've made something that's very appealing to a specific customer category, and so
Yeah.
it wasn't super hard to make that deal.
And what is that? Like you mentioned that the 10,000 GPUs are going to be
Yeah.
better set up than Colossus.
Yeah.
How is it set up? Like, what is the unique?
So the biggest difference here is that a lot of facilities are being built for general purpose use because that was the metaphor, 3-4 years ago was like, okay, I want something that can do it all. I can train my AI there. I can inference talk to the AI there. I can use it for machine learning research. I can use it for experiments. I can, decompose and recompose the chips into arbitrary virtual computers with, the push of a button. And that type of infrastructure is really good for general purpose use, but that's like a Honda Civic. What we're building here is not for that type of use. It only does one thing, which is inference. It does it extremely well. And so it's like building an F1 car instead of a Honda Civic. So every optimization you can think of, from the hardware selection, software selection, architecture of the chips, the way we're designing the building around it, the way we exploit the fiber network, all of that stuff has been from a single use perspective only. And as a result of that, we attain efficiencies across virtually every aspect of the value chain there.
Okay.
So it ends up just creating much better unit economics and a much like a physically differentiated service that you can't really get just from a generic data center.
Okay.
When you think about where the world's going to, I mean, there's been a fixation over the past, few years around building gigawatt scale facilities to enable the training of LLMs because they require a single site concentration of compute to do this very specific task until, GPT-5 is trained. And then you can take those models and then you can deploy them and you can interact with them via inference. Like Graeme could speak at this to a much higher degree than me. I'm just going to, kind of broaden it a bit. When you start moving from that building for LLMs to inference, you don't necessarily need that same scale of assets, right? It becomes much more important to utilize the characteristics of a site like this to provide a very high margin, very unique, moatable service that people need. Like the compute of last resort. This is the stuff that's protected if the market just floods with stuff that's way out in the middle of nowhere where latency, you can't deliver a latent product. There's been a bunch of studies and a bunch of reports coming out, and I can't remember the site of the report, but historically, LLMs have taken a lot more of the energy or a lot more of the compute and a lot more of the tokens than training LLMs. 2027, that's supposed to cross over. So at that point, inference has exceeded, over 50% what is being used to train LLMs, and the curve for inference is just up from there. So you're going to continue, that is going to continue to grow, and you're going to see more demand for sites like this, not less.
Okay, that's awesome. And you mentioned efficiency a few times. Efficiency in the build out, and also obviously you guys are an AI infrastructure fund as well through Augur, and so finding efficient ways to deploy energy is really important. AI data centers typically operate in spikes, right?
Yeah.
In terms of energy usage, spiking. Have you guys thought about like efficiency while an AI data center is operating? Is that why we're also in this site?
Yeah, so
Space?
this
It's not just about the efficiency of the energy, it's about efficiency of the use of the equipment and the use of capital. So we mentioned that we have invested, we have Augur Energy I Fund 1. We're doing our second fund. We've been investing with the North Star of always doing a facility like this and thinking about, as we've been, seeking and investing in companies, what would be required in the architecture to build out this site, this kind of infrastructure. So we've deployed capital into a bunch of companies that we're actually going to integrate into the architecture here at Foundation and into future Simply Silicon sites to utilize more of the compute, to not utilize 40 or 50%, but to create capacity contracts and then to sell tokens directly via markets and via orchestrators and via a bunch of different functioning entities working together to bump that up from 40 or 50% to 80 to 90% usage. So if you think about efficiency, there's the energetic side of it, but then there's also the capital and the infrastructure side of it. All of the infrastructure for this building and everything connected to it is going to be utilized at a higher rate than if you're only doing 40 or 50%.
Yeah.
Using that compute 40 or 50% of the time.
Yeah.
One cool thing I'll tell you about what we're doing here, and this is something we haven't actually talked about before, so you're going to get Tech Thursday exclusive right here.
Okay,
We love you
breaking
guys.
news.
This is actually just a deal we made yesterday, so it's really good timing on this. If you look all around the world right now, people, as kind of alluded to earlier, are worried about the effects of data centers because they do have inconsistent use profile on power grids. So one of the things that we're doing with this site is we're integrating it into a bunch of other electrical loads remotely around the city of Calgary. And what that allows us to do is if there's ever a problem where we're drawing so much electricity that it could cause an issue, we can flex against those other loads using remote control. So this is a really hot topic right now. It's like responsive data centers. Google's doing it. There's a company called Emerald AI that's built some really neat software around it. There's a bunch of players looking at it. We're definitely going to be the first players in Canada to do this. And the way that we're doing it, we're probably going to be the first in the world in terms of the actual technical implementation. So it's really going to be, to Dan's point, a North Star in terms of the technologies that we use here for other players to look at and say, oh, that's how you build something really efficient.
Yeah. Okay. Talk to me more. Give me some more examples of other Augur investments that you guys have made that are going to fit into a site like this.
Oh, happy to. So, I mean, one of our investments that we've done that we're extremely pleased with, AirVolta. Shout out to AirVolta, Margarita. You guys are the best. We love you. Fantastic company. AirVolta makes next generation data center infrastructure management platform that effectively recognizes that DSIM, as it's called, was really something that people did as kind of like an afterthought for most of these types of facilities, and they did it themselves. They made in-house custom brewed software for each data center they did, and people weren't really happy with that. Of course, we're moving into an era where lenders, for example, care about how the chips are doing, where companies don't want to have to build something. They just want to get something off the shelf that can do everything they need to integrate not just the chips and the racks, but the SCADA, so the HVAC system, the electricity system, all of that stuff. So AirVolta, we're building this as an AirVolta native data center. We're going to be incorporating their technology throughout. That's going to give us a very high degree of visibility and flexibility in our operations as compared to your average traditional data center that you see here in Canada. We have a really strong relationship with them. We were one of their first investors. We're very excited to be deploying their technology here.
Yeah. Okay. And we've mentioned a little bit what's next. We've talked about we can add more GPUs, but like, what size could this site get to? And then what is next for Simply Silicon? Are we taking over the world?
Yeah, so we're taking over the world. Our goal is to build Canada's first trillion-dollar company.
Yep.
Canada hasn't had. Canada's biggest startups have only grown to about the $100 billion scale. And like, that's a big company and it's a big success, don't get me wrong. But we've never done anything that's like, breached the next level above that. And that doesn't really make sense because we're, extremely well positioned to do it. It's a function of a lot of different things, but Simply Silicon's goal is to build something massive. So we're acquiring sites right now all around North America that have characteristics that are similar to, here at Foundation, so that we can go, not just up to the scale of this facility, not just up to even, attaching other sites to it here in Calgary, but to go and be a massive, massive business that does this really highly specialized inference service for major metro areas all across North America. We're looking at Grand Rapids. We're looking at Oklahoma City. We got a ton of plays that we're looking at. San Francisco, Los Angeles. Here in Canada, we've talked with pretty much everybody you can imagine under the sun. Our goal is to build out a really specialized book of these unique sites and to operate them and monetize them and to go all the way with it.
Yeah, we're starting conversations with folks in Europe as well.
Okay. And so you guys are then looking at obviously the demand for AI data centers or just AI in general, and saying the $1 trillion play here is obviously like NVIDIA has the market cornered in terms of chips.
Yeah.
But the AI infrastructure where like we're actually building the data centers efficiently, optimizing electricity, building into the grids, and also like plugging in all these other companies to make this space run super efficiently. That is another $1 trillion play here that no one else is looking at.
Metropolitan infrastructure.
Yeah.
The North Star moat is that we're building out facilities that have physical characteristics that you can't spend any amount of money to replicate, really. So like the conduit network here, for example, if I came along and I'm Elon Musk and I'm like, oh, I've got infinite money. Hey, city of Calgary, can I tear up eight miles of your roads on, the next few months to like lay fiber? You're going to be told no matter how much you put on the table, right? Like it's just too disruptive at this point to try and replicate this because it took a long time for this to get built out. It was a utility. It had special, enablement to do that. The sites that we're looking at all around the world have similar unique physical characteristics that enable us to deliver these inference services that we know people want and that you can't just deliver with like generic, infrastructure that exists today. And so that moat, that's the core of how we get huge. Like all the other stuff, efficiency's cool, but anybody can be efficient. Anybody can buy the right chips. Anybody can put the right software on them. Anybody can design it in the right way. Anybody can try and make deals with utilities. The core is that these sites that we've found, there's not like infinite of them. There's a very small, limited collection of them, and we've already got a huge head start on everybody else in acquiring them.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious now that you've sort of given your secret sauce out, which is like just find these super unique spaces. What makes you win in the long term? Why Simply Silicon winning?
I think that we've got a playbook that allows us to transact with people who operate these types of spaces really well. We've done it already. We know how to do it. We know what the risks are. We know what the constraints are. And most importantly, we understand that like utilities, they have a higher purpose. Like they don't just care about, grinding cash off of AI infrastructure. They deliver hot water to keep people's houses warm. They deliver electricity to keep the lights on. They're regulated to do that first and foremost. You can't just throw money at them and say, want to also do this line of business? Our ability to make deals and to get into commercial relationships that are compatible with both the utilities' need to offer a regulated service on the one hand, and the ability to integrate data center infrastructure on the other hand, we're the only players who've done it.
You need to have like a deep bench that understands all those worlds, right?
Yeah.
The utility world, the energy world, the infrastructure world that underlays all of it, and the compute world. And you find that folks that are players out there maybe specialize in one of those pillars, but they don't specialize across it.
Yeah. Okay. I want to end on the global competitiveness of Canadian companies. Graeme, you've just been publishing
Yes.
a 3-part series on LinkedIn
Yeah.
about the government of Canada has just announced $800 million
Yeah.
to build sovereign compute. Maybe what is sovereign compute? Why is it important to build it? And like, first of all, do you guys consider what you guys are building here sovereign compute, or you guys don't necessarily care for that?
You know, there's a great framework that we use, which is a company just sovereign or also sovereign? So if it's just sovereign, you're going to see that like it lives in lobbying land, it markets exclusively to governments, it's going to have like Canada in the name of its service or the name of its company. It really exists as a byproduct of like RFP land and like this pull to like deploy stuff that is sovereign. And so they'll talk about, oh, we're Canada's sovereign, company, Canada's sovereign cloud, like pick your poison. That's called just sovereign. Those companies aren't, from our perspective in VC land, investable because you can't build a long-term durable business on that. You end up becoming like a creature of the moment of the policy wins, and you live or die by those policy wins. Also sovereign. What we're building here is also sovereign. It's not aimed at delivering a sovereign service inherently. It's aimed at making money and being globally competitive. And we could take this model, we could go anywhere on earth, and it would remain competitive in that place, whether or not the local government liked us, whether or not the policy winds blew for or against us. Private markets would buy our stuff no matter what because it's inherently valuable for them. But we've got this capability that we recognized relatively early on that we could deliver for governments to deliver a service that's like physically ultra secure. And that ultra high security, because it's air gapped, like it's not even touching the internet, that makes us also sovereign. We can also do a sovereign play. And so we're able to market into that space if we want to, as a consequence of just building something that's really, really valuable for its own sake anyways. So to your question about, global competitiveness in Canada. Canada makes incredible entrepreneurs. Like, just to say this out loud, people always accuse me of not, being patriotic. I love Canada. Canada makes the world's best entrepreneurs. We have an ultra high talent production rate compared to other places, in part because, you grew up on the prairies like us. There's nothing to do all day. There's no trees around. You're taller than the grass. You're looking around. You're like, why am I even on this world?
That's right.
It leads to this ability to see more and to want more. Canada creates some of the world's best entrepreneurs for a number of reasons, including culture, including the skill issues that the endogenous VC environment here has in Canada, a whole bunch of things. We don't do a great job of taking that talent and converting it to billion-dollar outcomes. Sovereign compute and this sovereign compute RFP that you're seeing, it's a symptom of that. What it's doing is it's trying to pull something out that's like, we want to give this industrial subsidy. We want to, create this value chain here. We recognize that it's not happening naturally. Instead of creating the conditions for it to happen naturally, why don't we try and force it? That'll work, right? Well, it never works. Like, look at the Northvolt battery plant, famous bankruptcy.
Right.
You can't force any of this stuff. You have to create the conditions for the incredibly, incredibly talented entrepreneurs here in Canada to flourish, instead of trying to be like, I'm going to pick a winning firm. That winning firm is going to be the Canadian firm in this space.
Right.
And as long as I prop them up, I'll look good. That's the way to lose.
And to be honest,
your job is adhering, if your whole intent is adhering to a mandate. So if you're the government, you're like, I care about my mandate. I set this mandate 5 years ago. I'm not going to revisit whether this mandate is pertinent, just generally. And now I'm going to force this mandate on people and companies and individuals and entrepreneurs and innovators and say, you must operate in this mandate construct or else, because I'm the source of all the capital and because I'm the one that says this must happen. So if an entrepreneur sits back and says, hey, it turns out like the world doesn't actually need this thing that you're asking for, but my only signal is like there's some economics in me to earn a living for a period of time via a salary, via grants, via whatever sort of financial and economic supports to do this. I guess I don't have a choice, so I'm going to go do this. Or I do have a choice. I'm going to leave Canada and do what I actually think is valuable fiscally, economically, from an impact, from an in my gut perspective. I guess I'm moving to San Francisco.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the choice that has been thrust down on the Canadian builder, unfortunately. unless you can create your own ecosystem of capital, your own ecosystem of innovation, you can actually access global customers. That's what we've gone and done. If somebody doesn't have like the fortitude to do that, or they just are like, wow, I'm just going to go next door, that's 99% of the time, due to the construct that has been created, that's the result.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting that you guys are doing it with so many folks. Like Calgary has a long history of people getting rich from oil and gas.
Yeah.
And that's sexy. Tech has almost the opposite of like
Yeah.
a long history of not getting rich, government subsidies,
Yeah.
and it's not super sexy.
Yeah.
Right. So I think you guys are very well positioned to like, all right, let's fucking get rich.
Hell yes.
And let's do it sexy.
We're going to do it for everybody. There's a ton of people from Calgary who have invested in us. My greatest goal is to create a fucking obscene amount of wealth for all of these people in Calgary who have placed their bets on us so that this cycle can just grow and grow and grow. That's what we're going to do. Our first fund is already insanely successful. Our second fund's going to succeed even more. Simply Silicon's going to be fucking massive, and Calgary Capital's going to reap the benefit.
Come on now. That's awesome. Guys, I think we got to take a tour. But
Yes.
before we leave, is there a question I didn't ask you that you were hoping I would ask you?
How'd you guys get so damn sexy, I guess, was the one I was hoping to get. But
I've never been asked that question in my life, so I don't know.
How'd you get so damn sexy, Graeme?
Eating my Wheaties, I guess. I'm not sure.
well water. in
Well
Saskatchewan.
water. Yeah, the bad water.
Lots of minerals in that.
The rough landscape.
Manganese.
That's right. Okay, awesome. Okay, let's go for a tour, guys.
Let's
Thank you
do
so
it.
much.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.